Earlier this year on our homestead, we had 2 goat births.
We got 2!
Oh my goodness!
What did you have? Let's clean them up, honey.
Both of those births had some complications. And after we released the video showing what we did, how we handled those births, the negative comments came pouring in. When it comes to animal husbandry, there are a lot of different management ideas, management styles, and I understand that we will not always agree as to what to do on our homesteads. But in preparation for an upcoming calving on our homestead that we were concerned about, I decided to ask Cody Creelman, a cow veterinarian who's been in the business for decades, about how we handled those goat births and what should be done if there's complications in a calving. A lot of people in the homesteading world have the feeling of birth is natural, let nature take its course. Cody, what's your experience with intervening versus letting nature take its course?
Yeah, a lot of different things. So there is circumstances, there is no question. It happens in nature all the time.
Stay tuned for what Cody had to say about how we handled our goat births and what we should expect with the calving, and whether or not you should intervene if something is going wrong or if something is not what you expect in your calving. As we're getting now, we're coming through this pregnancy. We know just by the calendar we're getting closer. What are we going to start looking for that's telling us, okay, on my calendar it says next week, and these are the signs that are showing me that yes, it probably is next week. What signs are we looking for that says calving's coming?
Always remember there can be a 2-week variation on either side that is perfectly normal. So it can just as easily be 2 weeks early as right on the due date as 2 weeks later. So nobody ever sweat when you see that day kind of sneak up and roll by and nothing changes and the cow looks exactly the same. Not to sweat. What we're looking for is a few different things. So you're going to certainly see that cow increase in size. You're going to see, if you're really tuned into your cows, you're going to see some calf movement a lot of times. If you're watching close enough, you'll see those calves kicking and moving and stuff like that. You're going to notice that cow starting to freshen up, right? You're going to notice changes in her udder. You're going to notice edema, especially in the first calvers, and you're going to see that final stage of udder development starting to occur in those first calf heifers. As that builds up, then that's a great indication. And as we're getting even closer, what we're going to start to notice is the hormone relaxin kick in. So this is a hormone that exists to soften the pelvic ligaments. And that's one thing that you're going to notice when things are getting really, really close. Then we go into our stages of labor. Okay, so we have stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. So stage 1 is that nesting phase, that the right before when that cow. I always make it analogous to I know right before my wife goes into labor, because all of a sudden the house is perfectly clean and there's 68 meals in the freezer. So there's this maternal instinct that baby is coming, and cows do the same thing. You'll notice more movement around in like straw type areas. You'll notice cows move out more into the periphery of things. They don't want to be right in the midst of all the action in a herd, but they don't want to be too far away either, exposing themselves to predators. So you kind of notice them on the edges of things, on the periphery of things. They're still trying to be in the herd, but they need a little more space, spinning around, sometimes laying down, getting up, just odd maternal behavior. Now, it's normal for this to last 24 to 48 hours. It'll last usually a little bit longer in first calf heifers. So it's just one of those things that you may note as this is coming up, this uncomfortableness before stage 2 starts. And stage 2 is defined by the forced abdominal contraction. So, think of when we're counting our contractions, when that cow is doing forced abdominal pushes to expel that calf, that is the stage 2. that's when we need to be very astute as ranchers, as homesteaders, because this is when we need to be getting out our watches and writing down a time when we are starting to notice that this cow is actively calving. One of the best signs that an old cowboy taught me of the very beginning of stage 2 of labor is when the cow is holding her tail just slightly kinked to the side. So I would imagine myself, if I had a tail and I started having uterine contractions, that I might hold it slightly kinked to the side as that kind of was starting up, right? So that's that's one of the first things. But you're going to notice those abdominal contractions. You're going to notice that cow taking pause and starting to push, whether she's standing up and whether she's laying down. You're going to start to notice those abdominal contractions, and that's a great time for you to note when that starts. You're also perhaps going to notice the passing of the cervical plug within that range. And now what we are going to want to see is those first calf heifers. 4 hours is a pretty typical time. Those cows take a little bit longer once they start having contractions. So up to 4 hours, I wouldn't get too worried. If we're moving into hour 5, hour 6, where that cow has been having forced contractions, there's something wrong. We need to intervene at some point. With cows that have had a calf before, that's a little bit quicker. So usually 60 to 120 minutes. So 1 to 2 hours from the time that we notice those forced abdominal contractions to the time we have expulsion of the calf is pretty like a pretty good time scale. So give those heifers a little bit extra time, but always keep an eye on your watch. Time can pass really fast. An hour can go by like a flash when you're calving a cow.
Okay, so this is a great topic that I want you to give us you just did, Cody, but I want to talk about a little more, because in the homesteading world, and maybe you see a crossover in the audience, but I know on our channel, we put out a video of our both of our goat births. Neither of them went perfect. One of them, we actually happened without us knowing it was happening. We showed up, and the first time, it was her first birth, and the babies were cold and she was rejecting them, and we jumped into go mode. Okay, get these babies warmed up, get them on mama. The second one, we saw the signs, it's coming. Okay, we could see the contractions. It was going slow, and then Kay wound up arm deep in a goat, helping to get this, what was a really large buck, out. And again, YouTube, the comments, we had so many people say, you guys should never have intervened with that goat. It was face first. We could see the tongue sticking out, the one that was stuck. So we saw the tongue, the mouth coming out, no hoof. It was like this. So Kay was like, well, you know what? It's face first. We're going to have to help this out. We're going to have to. So she went in and changed it and pulled the legs forward, and she helped get that thing out. But a lot of people in the homesteading world have the feeling of birth is natural, let nature take its course, keep the lights low, peaceful serenity, and just let that goat do her thing, and nature will fix everything. Cody, what's your experience with intervening versus letting nature take its course?
Right. So we did our time scale of how long the whole process should take, but there's a very important part of that is exactly what you said, is progression. And that is the absolute key when we're calving out a cow, is for us to keep an eye on progression. So we want to see something new happening every 20 minutes. Okay. So, that cow is going to start doing those forced abdominal contractions. Within 20 minutes, in the vast majority of cases, we want to see a water bag. And 20 minutes later, I don't want to still be staring at a water bag. I want to see that water bag has now broke, or at least now feet are coming out. And 20 minutes later, after seeing the feet come out, I want to see head. And 20 minutes after that, I want to see the whole calf. So 20 minutes is always the important thing. So if you're not sure if it is time to intervene, then look at your watch, give everybody 20 minutes. And if nothing has changed, it's not going to fix itself. It is the best rule of thumb. And that is another important thing, even for myself, and that I tell all my ranchers, is that even applies for when you're helping an animal out. You have 20 minutes. I don't have any problem with ranchers or homesteaders or farmers helping an animal out. but you need to be watching the clock. And if she went in there and she wasn't able to push the head back in 20 minutes, that's not progression, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or if you're fishing for a leg for longer than 20 minutes, that's not a progression. So at any time that 20 minutes, no matter what you're doing, whether you're watching her or if you're intervening yourself, if 20 minutes goes by and nothing's changed, you got to do something else. You got to call a neighbor, you got to call a vet, you have to intervene, you have to stick an arm in, you have to do whatever you need. And I hold myself to the same standard as well. If I haven't done something in 20 minutes when I show up to do an obstetrical case, then I'm changing plans.
Yeah.
I'm either putting in an epidural, I'm providing some sort of support, I'm changing overall positions, or I'm going to C-section. I'm not wasting time. There's no good that I'm doing if I'm doing nothing, besides paddling and sweating a lot for 60 minutes. So the rule of 20 minutes is probably the most important obstetrical rule.
What happens, let's spell it out here. When you let nature take its course and things aren't progressing, what happens?
Yeah, a lot of different things. So there is circumstances, there is no question. It happens in nature all the time where, let's say a breech calving happens or a backwards calf happens and the cow has it without any issue. It can happen, and it is why the species still exists, because they're able to do some remarkable things sometimes. The most common thing that I end up seeing is firstly a dead calf. You can only stress that calf out in a malposition for so long, whether that's head back, whether that's coming backwards. So when I see a cow that is in fine shape and come across a dead, obviously stressed out calf in a very awkward position, that is a result. The calf, the lamb, the whatever can die in not a very long time. Horses are the most aggressive birthers. They will, if there's any sort of issue at all, it's almost an instant death sentence for both foal and mare. Where other animals are a little bit more of a progression. So that can absolutely happen, but then carry that forward. There can be death of the mom too. There can be uterine tear, so that cow can tear out. That cow can exsanguinate herself. She can bleed out. That cow can go into shock. That cow, if that calf dies and days go by, that calf can get rotten and we can have sepsis, and that cow can die of septicemia. So there's very serious consequences. And I'm not saying that you always have to call the vet for a C-section. Like sometimes, in a realistic situation, euthanasia is also an option, right? You don't have access to veterinary care. It sucks. Trust me, I completely get it. I dedicated my whole life to this profession, but I understand too, there's economical, logistical, and welfare issues where that is also an option, that euthanasia is an option.
This advice from Cody turns out to be incredibly timely advice. As you will see in an upcoming video, stay tuned, the calving happened, and we had to apply some of Cody's advice to our situation. So make sure to stick around for that. If you want to see the whole interview with Cody, it's available in the Pioneers Library. Click here to become a Homesteady Pioneer. It's the unedited, full-length interview with Cody. It's really, really helpful if you have a calving coming up or you're planning one. And to check out Cody's channel.
Yeah, absolutely. So still on YouTube, Cody Krillman Cow Vet is the handle there. We're following chronicling all of our crazy family adventures, and the big sort of business thing that I'm doing is really just what we did over the last hour and a half. I've put out a digital module for cow-calf producers called the Cow Boss, and it is an online resource for farmers and ranchers of all skill sets to be able to access and allow them to go through the entire production cycles.
Click here, you can watch that video and see a lot more of his awesome cow vet videos.